Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Wild Man Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Steve McNamara, and today I have an amazing guest. Well, I don't actually. I'm gonna run this one full free flow because as I've been interviewing amazing men, I'm like, wait a sec. There's a lot of people in the world that don't actually really know me yet, and I thought I'd give a bit of insight and really what's come together for what's been a real driver to put this podcast and everything else I do in the world out there. Before I get to that, but please, guys, no matter where you're listening or watching, whether you're on YouTube seeing it now, check the links below for iTunes, for Spotify and other platforms. And if you're listening in and you're more of a visual person, I have my own YouTube channel. Check out the link below and any other links below on previous podcast videos, whether it's from my guests, special offers or anything that I'm running in the world, courses, training or anything like that. Please check them out. And most importantly of all, guys, to help me reach more people. I know a bunch of you are raving fans already, and I really do love and appreciate you all, but I want to reach as many men and women as possible. It might be the Wild Man Revolution podcast, but one of the big questions I see shouted basically from the rooftops when I was sitting with what I could do to serve or answer this question for a lot of people is like, where are all the men? Well, I'll tell you right now, if you haven't already checked it out with the amazing guests we've had there on the Wild Man Revolution podcast. So let's get this rolling today. If you haven't already, if this is your first time tuning in, thank you, welcome. Please go back on whatever platform and check out the amazing guests I've already had so far. And to let you know, coming forward, I've already got some pre-recorded ones which are currently being produced and edited and everything to make them a bit more easy for you guys to digest, because we do cover a lot. I've got some great guests coming up. Someone who's really, really deep into the world of impacting men in a really in-your-face, grounded kind of way. I'm super excited to share Dave Berryman's self-made interview. It's amazing. A networker who's been in the game since way back in the early 90s, has seen basically it all, has experienced so much. So it's great to have some real grounded, long-time experience coming in. A good mate of mine, Andrew Scolari, and got other guests lining up which are focused on solutions for the world. Amazing men. And that's what this is about, highlighting to answer that question. There are amazing men doing amazing things in the world right now. There really are. There really are. I looked at my network when I was putting this together and I'm like, at first I'm like, oh yeah, it's a great idea, Steve, but like who's going to be doing this? And I have a lineup now. I've stacked out right into February now of amazing guests who will put their hand up to come on here. I'm feeling blessed and grateful, really. But I did think, wait a second, it's all good and well, like just asking a bunch of questions to these amazing men. But what about me? My little significant little Steve wanted to have a chat. And I thought the timing was right too, because with the state of the world right now, I've got to say I've definitely had my challenges over the last couple of years, but they've been really, really good challenges. There's been challenges brought about by focusing on the next level of impact, focusing on the next level of how can I serve, or how can I get better at what I do? I'm a coach, a mentor, breathwork practitioner, also work in the trauma-informed space. I've been really diving deeper into that over the last period of time. Definitely have a passion for helping people with mental health, but also if you want to put it on a spectrum or a scale, although I really do view everyone as doing the best they can where they are now, and everyone's version of success is different, but be able to help people to take it to that next level of success, whether it be next level of success in business, personal relationships, especially relationships with my jam. I have an amazing relationship with my soon-to-be wife. Yep, long time coming, but soon-to-be wife early next year, Chaitanya, and definitely family and being a father. It's a passion of mine, not only focusing on my own inner work to be the very best father and soon to be husband that I can, or partner or fiance, however you want to word it, but also to be that example for other men out there, living in a relationship, doing it a different way, everything from the way I run business. Definitely my background was 20 odd years in I won't say a 9-to-5 job. I was more of a 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. worker, especially when I got into supervising in my early 20s, really took ownership of that. And it was actually something that served me and didn't serve me long term. But if I was to rewind the clock a little bit, again, maybe a bit of a rehash for all you guys that have known me for a while and followed my journey and tuned in for a while or even work with me. To you newbies who might go, who is Steve? Like, what is this wild man stuff? Now, I first thought about the wild man because a lot of people, when I tell them stories or I show them photos, I'm generally out in nature. I'm generally driven somewhere 18 or 20 hours to the middle of buttfuck nowhere where no one's ever heard of. And I found some random little creek or river or lake that everyone's going, what? And I'll be doing some fishing or I'll be doing some exploring or hiking. And most of the photos would be me holding giant fish. They're like, what the fuck's that? Or big snakes, predominantly venomous too. I don't know if you guys know that Australia has, I think it's 8 of the 10 most venomous, not most dangerous, but venomous, dangerous, sort of go hand in hand, but 8 of the 10 most venomous snakes on the planet. Now I've held 8 out of 10. No, it's actually 9 of the 10. I've held 7 of them out in the wild, not in captivity or anything like that. So you could say that's a bit wild. So I sort of do see myself as a little bit wild in that regard. My unplugged time, I do go on crazy little adventures by myself. Sometimes people are game enough to come with me, but I do make sure I get some evidence with the photos and that. But I do see that part of me, but also the wild. It could be an acronym, I think you could say it, for a bunch of other things that I like to break down, whether it's coming to my coaching and mentoring services, like a focus on wisdom, a focus on intuition, a focus on living, lifestyle, love, focus on discipline. I'm very, very big on discipline. Being a practitioner and being a coach and mentor, I truly, truly believe in practicing what we preach. I think it's something that's missing in this world right now. There's a lot of falsities out there. There's a lot of inauthenticity. There's a lot of people out of integrity, whether they know it or not. And I do say that coming from a place of humbleness too, not saying, hey, I'm fucking perfect. I've learned some tough lessons. And I feel as I go on in life as well that I learn harder lessons, especially around integrity. Every time I feel like there's an opportunity to maybe take the shortcut. And us humans, we are hardwired to take the path of least resistance. But when it comes to our integrity, especially as a man, I've learned some really tough lessons, and they really have served me well around integrity. But anyway, let's go back to my past a little bit. From drugs, alcohol for many, many years. Back further, I love sport. Sport was a huge thing for me. I was always the little guy, and I was always the little angry guy. I even formed a really, really strong belief system or program around, I am angry. That's just how I am. It led to lots of violence for me. You could say in the fight or flee sort of thing, I was always in fight, no matter what. I always felt like I was under threat, but I didn't really acknowledge this or become aware of this till I started my journey late in my 30s or mid 30s. But yeah, grew up Southern Australia in the hills north of Melbourne, country little town. It's a bit bigger now, but again, love my sport, lived across the road from a golf course. My dad and mum worked really, really hard raising myself and 3 other siblings, my brothers and sisters. And yeah, lived in a lovely little country town, which was really, really cool for me. There was lots of nature there. It's where I actually grew up to learn to love snakes, even though I was petrified of them at first, but I now started catching them. Really interesting. That was part of my journey. Might even dedicate a whole video to that down the track and put it on YouTube for you guys, because I think might scare some of you, but it might give some more social proof to the wild man. I'll get back to that wild man description too down the track. It's very important. But yeah, grew up, it was a bit of a country town, very, very small. Everyone knew everyone, played footy, loved my footy. But again, I was very, very angry. As far back as I remember, I was always throwing tantrums, and it was always my go-to. Whether it was me being picked on or just perceived to be picked on or just the smallest in the footy field, I'd get angry, and that was my energy just to make up for my lack of height or my lack of stature, you could say. And I definitely carried that with me for a long time. You could call it a sort of turning that angry little man syndrome. And yeah, definitely growing up, I had a lot of my environment sort of played into that too. And growing up, when we're kids, we we're not as responsible, or we don't have the opportunity to be as responsible for our environment as we do once we hit our late teens. And again, upon reflection, I know my parents, they did amazing with me. They really did. Having their own, what would you say? I'm not going to call shortcomings, but having their own differences in how they lived life back then definitely rubbed off on me. I know my dad worked really, really hard, and it's actually become a really big driver of mine. Not to not be like my dad, because I tell you what, without a lot of the life skills, a lot of the lessons and wisdom he's passed on to me, both verbally and energetically, I definitely couldn't be here today. But some of the unhealthy patterns and behaviors that I witnessed from everything of what it is to be a man, that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. And if I said that to my old man's face back in the day, he'd probably give me one. But there's a hint right there. But for even the way he worked really, really hard to provide, like that old paradigm of social conditioning that really took the man away from the house, away from the family, when it used to be the man took his son under his wing, not just on the weekends, which my dad did. He was amazing at that. He took us away all the time, which really helped me grow my love for nature and that adventure and that exploring part of me, that wild part of me. But at the same time, not really seeing my dad every day until he got home at dark, where he just wanted to crack a couple of cans of beer, sit down and relax because he worked his ass off. But thinking that was the only dimension that he had to bring to the family was something that I've learned in my healing journey. That's probably that generation was unaware of the impact it could have on my generation and beyond. But yeah, my mum was amazing. She's amazing. Even though I've done a lot of healing around my mum, probably for her not standing up for herself back then, which I didn't realize, but coming to grow through my awareness of how my childhood was and the great things that I was given the opportunity to experience just from where we lived, the great people, the friendships I formed when I was a kid, the great little skills I picked up. It definitely wasn't all bad. The sport was a big thing. I'm high energy, as you probably noticed. I'm still high energy now that I'm in my 40s. I'm glad I am, because I've got a very highly energetic 3-year-old. And I do a lot of work in the world, but it's definitely not the go away from my family throughout the day, come home and I'm fucked. I just want to sit down. I just want to unplug. And if you know the man cycle, men and women listening to this out there, man cycle, our energy is primed in the morning. Our testosterone levels are primed in the morning. Our work output is primed in the morning. When it comes to the end of the day, we want to chill. And that's the same now. And my dad worked his ass off. He really did, and did his best, taking us on little adventures on the weekend. Again, I picked up lots and lots of life skills, my adventuring, a lot of survival skills, which it's not what he basically taught, but I just picked up on. Remember something really, really important, and I always pause to reflect on this or catch myself when River's around, that our little ones model us energetically. Yeah, they see what we do, but they pick up on our energy. And I definitely picked up on my dad's energy when I was seeing him do things physically, but also when it came to when he was really tired and burnt out all the time, or when he just wanted a breather, or when he just wanted a break, but he's come back into this family of kids that he was bringing up, that he was providing for, and maybe didn't have the energy or didn't have the understanding or the awareness to be able to give a little bit more when it comes to connection, when it comes to presence. Again, I think a lot of you are probably listening to this and going, yeah, that was my generation. Well, I seen that in my parents. And yeah, there was a lot that went on there. I'm reflecting now. This is why this way of expressing and coming and sharing with you guys is really, really powerful, and one of the drivers for me putting a podcast together and even recording a video, because it's when I'm sharing or when my guests are sharing, it has us be in that experience. And one of my intentions with how I show up, be it in my marketing or my blogging or my socials or here, is to be as real as I can. And the only way to be as real as you can is be real, is actually feel it. And sitting here sharing this stuff around growing up and how my parents were, and my dad with his work, and that it does bring up a little bit of stuff, not in a bad way. Like, we lived in this, my dad built our house, and probably like most builders out there was odds and ends that were never finished, but it was a great family house to grow up in. And at the same time, to sort of witness the breakdown of my mum and dad's marriage, again, without going into that too much, I think we see that a lot in that generation coming into now, and even now occurring a lot. That marriages don't last for whatever reasons, and just witnessing that energetically, it didn't really give me a good footing on how I was going to show up in the world, be it in relationships, as a man, as a father. I even give up on being a father into my 30s. I gave up on relationships, to tell you the truth. I didn't have many relationships. I didn't get into them until later in my teens. I really was more focused on little Steve and little angry Steve, playing his sport, filling in time, going on adventures. That was my thing. And yeah, as soon as I got into my teens, I was always growing up, surrounded by alcohol. Doesn't matter what social setting, family settings, all the time, whether it's gatherings for birthdays, Christmas, there always had to be beers in the esky or in the fridge. Someone had to be bringing the beers, and it was inevitable. It was inevitable that in some part of my life, I feel that was going to come in. And what I want to share, and what I'm really big on too, and as I really grow my understanding of like this, how we as men of society have got to where we are. It's not all bad. It's not all bad, but where we have, and even saying this out loud feels a little strange, but as men, we're sort of not responsible for what we've been born into in these previous generations. Now, I'm not saying we're not responsible as soon as we are born into this. We are totally responsible for everything in our reality. But when we're born into this social setting, this environment where automatically we're starting at the back of the field. We're coming into this where the things we're modeling are some of the things I've mentioned here. The man of the house away all the time. It's like the man of the house going away for war, so the women started to work. This is something that's been going on for a long time. Man, this is why I say there's part of this is we're not responsible for, but as soon as you're aware of this, it doesn't mean you blame it. It doesn't mean you're the victim to it. But you've got to be aware of this. What I was born into was the social conditioning around what it had been to be a man, a parent. Don't even like using that word, parent. More to come on that on later episodes, the meaning of words and stuff like that, and how the government use them doublespeak. But being a father, being a man, just an independent man, being a woman, all these things were getting so distorted by the time I was born in the late 70s. And I didn't realize this till I was on my journey, and I was taking responsibility in my life many, many years later. But what I witnessed then, like I say, the alcohol was everywhere. Smoking, alcohol, dysfunction in families, suppression of emotions, avoidance of emotions, or projection of emotions, hiding behind social masks. This was all what I was modeling. Lots of religion growing up. Now, my parents weren't very religious, but it sort of was like this social mask where I felt like my dad had to be. He'd go to church, even though he fucking hated it. Going through religious schools, like my first primary schools I went to had nuns still. Then I went to a Maris Brothers College. So there was a very religious take on things, even though my intuition was like, what the fuck is this shit? Each to their own, I say too. I'm not on here to judge. I'm like all about personal choice. And if something works for you, go for it. But for me, that was never going to be the path. I've got to say, but when I was waking up, you could say, when I was asking questions of myself, what am I on this planet for? Why am I unhappy? Why am I unfulfilled? I've got all these toys. I've got all this so perceived things. The first book I picked up was the Bible. I got through the Old Testament, and I started questioning, like, who the fuck are these fuckers that are 400 years old? What happened? Who's this and that? And I just was more fucking confused after reading that. I'm like, fuck the New Testament. But anyway, more on that in a later episode later. Some other learnings I've got from that. Again, I'm not here to Bible bash or anything. It was my perception of what I read at the time. I didn't get it. Because what I grew up in was like, as soon as I got to an age where I didn't have to do something, say 16 or something, I'm like, religion, I don't have to do that anymore. I'm like, I went the opposite direction. Like, it's keep that away from me. It's weird. So it even happened early in my 30s, and like when I couldn't make relationships work with women, I'm like, keep them fucking away from me. They're weird. They're too hard. Glad that's all changed now, hey. But growing up, witnessing all these, that was my modeling, my energetic modeling of what I got. The men in my life were footballers, were on the TV, newsreaders. And from what I know now, holy fuck, what a tough gig I was born into, and all you men out there and all you women. But like the men we were energetically modeling in our life, if you sit and just go back and just think about it, like, what is that? Is that what you view yourself growing up as? And I could go into the conditioning in school around this, some of the male teachers, oh my God. But anyway, didn't matter. I went on with my life, turned to alcohol in a big way. It was inevitable. I really think it was the way I grew up with my anger, the suppression of my emotions, which a lot of people would have said I was an emotional kid, but I wasn't. It was all anger. It was all surface level stuff. And if you know anything about, I love the NLP model of, it just simply breaks down. Anger is a surface one that fights to keep all these other emotions in. And yeah, I would have probably say that I had some traumatic experiences when I was young, but it was not like car crashes and that sort of thing. But without going too deep, definitely exposure to abuse or sexual abuse in environments, and not from my parents. My parents were fucking amazing. They provided you could say a safe environment, definitely. But knowing what I know now about trauma could have been yelling, loud noise and fighting. There was lots of that growing up for me, lots and lots of that. So it was an easy go for me to hit the alcohol, especially as a footballer. As soon as I went into the football realm in seniors, so to say. So I was 15, 16, I think when I played my first game of seniors, which was a big deal. I was still in school, but the local club. So what do they do after the game? Beers all around. You're a 16-year-old. Oh, how cool is this? Let's get him pissed. I was all down for that. So it was really easy for me every Thursday night after footy training, every weekend, I'd get on the piss. 16, I'd hide in the pub fridge every Friday night when the cops come in. The publicans will let me do this shit. So these environments were playing into this crazy mix of what was becoming my life. And then the violence really took hold a lot. And when I say violent, it was just me fighting off in that fight or flight, but it was always fight. If something was a threat to me, whether someone had a go at me at a pub or a club or on the footy field especially, it was all anger. It was all throwing wild fists. It was all craziness. That led into then starting to abuse police. And I used to start getting locked up a lot for drunken disorderlies. I even got charged one night where I threw a couple at a copper. We became great friends after that, by the way. It actually showed me a different side of that. I got some great lessons out of that, but it was a tough road. And that was in my teens. Like I say, this is many, many years ago, but that violence kept going through my 20s and 30s. And every time I'd get into a fight and I'd throw a few punches and then nothing come back to me, I actually grew this significance around it. It was very unhealthy. Went to court a number of times. Definitely, I think the last time I went to court, I had a bunch of charges for assault and all these things. And for a lot of you, a lot of this might be resonating. For a lot of you might say, fucking bullshit, Steve. Look at you, man. Like, serious? What you're doing in the world now? But hey, guys, sometimes we go down a path and we make some silly mistakes, but I don't say we have to in life, but we get these opportunities. We get these opportunities to be shown a different side of things, or to ground in more, to trust our intuition, or to, again, maybe learn deeper lessons. And I really feel I learned a lot of hard lessons and took the path I did, or the paths I did, to be able to give back more now. I really believe that now. And it's not to incentivize. If you want to make an impact in the world, you've got to have a violent, fucking crazy past. No. It's to say, for me, I look back on it and that was my path. I always had the opportunity to pause before I argued, to pause before I had a drink, to pause before I took drugs, to pause before I went out, to pause before I said that thing or did that thing, or pause before I didn't do that thing. I always had the opportunities, and every time something comes up, whether I'm in a healing or I'm in a coaching session and it comes from my past, I can recognize there was always a moment in time. There was always a fork in the road. There was always an opportunity. But at the time, it was always the one of what I thought was least resistance, which led to probably the most trouble. And again, through my 20s, my parents were epic, but they were probably thinking, and I think they may have even said to me, they're like, what the fuck are you doing, Steve? I worked hard in my job. I worked hard. I kept one job for like 11, 12 years. I worked so fucking hard in that. But that was my escape. My other escape in my 20s, especially, was going away fishing, the wild stuff. But I was wild too. You can see why this is multi-dimensional, this wild man, because I actually did see as like that fight response I had. I was always breathing in my chest. I was always like massive anxiety. Turned into a caffeine junkie. I couldn't believe that happened, because I actually didn't have coffee, caffeine in my 20s. It was really weird. Hey, now coffee's epic, but not like I had it in my 20s. The speed, the ecstasy, all the things. Very disconnected from my body, very unhealthy. Didn't train my body, even though I played a lot of sport. But it was such an interesting period of me in that the lessons I was learning and the court stuff. A lot of people don't know this about me, and there's a lot of guilt and shame in my life came from that period. I've worked on a lot, but hey, the work's continual, I believe. There's a lot of guilt and shame for that period of my life, especially as I went on. The things I did got more extreme. And I remember the last court case I went to, which was about 6 hours from home. 3 people knew that I was going to court for 12 months. 3 people. My parents didn't even know. No one in my family knew. My boss at the time, God bless his soul, bloody legend, helped me out with so much, even though we had our differences. But this was one big fucking blessing. Probably 4 people. My lawyers, bless them too. I don't know how they did it. And maybe a couple of people that wrote some really nice things about me in court. But that was, I remember standing in court, and it was for assault with a weapon. The weapon was a pot. I thought I was defending myself, but my defending myself was that as soon as I felt threatened, I'd go on the attack. I remember standing in court, and I had this persona. I was wild. That's how I got through things. Because I was wild. That was my protection mechanism. That was my cover when I was telling people about it. That was my go-to. That was my real solid mask. I'm just an angry, wild motherfucker. Stay out of my way if you don't see what I see, believe what I believe, blah, 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 blah. All these things. Sort of similar to me now, but I'm way more compassionate. Way more understanding and respectful of everyone's different models of the world. If you have a look at the Wild Man Revolution tagline, if you want to call it, I don't know if you've checked it out. We have respect doesn't mean we agree. That's how I function now. It's a really strong belief. But back then I had no respect. But standing there in court, and the judge did his whole thing, saying a bunch of things, which was all a blur. Do you understand? And little did I know about the legal terminology back then. Of course, I was below him and agreed to that. But I was fucking petrified. I thought I was going to jail. And what was going through my head is like, not the things I would miss. It's like, I haven't even told like the ones I love about this. And here I am 6 hours away. I don't even know. My car's probably going to stay. Am I going to get taken away now? I was focusing on what could go wrong with this, the worst possible thing. And I just looked at my lawyer, and he just winked at me. And he's like, head up. That's weird. And I just had something drop in. And this was in my late 20s. I still wasn't really tuned in or connected to myself, but something dropped in. I know it was intuition. It's like, hey man, focus on the positive here. Focus on the best scenario. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do my best. Petrified. I was shaking. When we go into shock, the body shakes. It's a healthy function. I was shaking like anything. I was sweating like crazy, even though where I was in Southern Victoria, it was about 3 degrees. And then the judge proceeded to roll out some surprising stuff from the person I actually got in the altercation with, who the police were laying charges, and this person was And he acted up on police. He had a history. I didn't know any of this, and nothing personal about the guy and all that, but I didn't know him. I didn't. It was just a random incident in a pub. There's no preconceived ideas or anything. There's nothing. But I listened to what unfolded, and the police actually, they actually took my side. I was astounded. I was back and forward for court for 12 months of this, and it was petrified. But when I say they took my side, the prosecutor didn't like me and he wanted to go in, but the police report from all the incidents, how I was afterwards and the respect I showed the police and everything, I did learn a lot around that in my 20s, respecting police to a point. And I think that's sort of missing now in society. And that's both parties, if you want to put them as a party, a lot of them are unconscious and a lot of them are running on this ego trip right now of power, but a lot of them are good people. And I learned about a lot of them being good people and about service. But in this court case, in this moment, and I heard this, and they held up a photo with a dude they got the blue with. He was literally like this. I'm holding up my fingers for you guys listening to the police in the police photos. And the judge took that as a character, and he looked at my character references, and he just asked me who the people who wrote the character references. I had like a school, not a sporting headmaster, wrote an amazing thing. I had a footy club president, amazing. And he read out some of the things to me, and he's like, "What do you think of that?" I was crying, because to be able to hear stuff from other people, I was never available for that, but it's almost like I needed to be trapped in this courtroom to hear some good shit said about myself, because I definitely didn't have good stuff going through my head. Not just in that court case, through life. I did it. I was really, really hard on myself. And I think a lot of us men do this. It's our mechanism when we feel guilty. Maybe we do harm others, other people in our life, loved ones, and then we're like, fuck, what have I done? You fucking idiot. That was me. I was harming people in my life, if you could call it that, just by being a dickhead, just by not really tuning in, not by pausing, not doing the work, really. But I knew nothing about the work back then. Ooh, wasn't meant to. But in this moment, I had all this stuff come to me, and this was my late 20s, and I promised myself then, and I didn't know how to do this, but I was never going to fight with anyone again in this regard. So I went the opposite extreme. I mentioned that earlier. I went the opposite of extreme. And that was done. Now, I always had the story, I'm going to give up drinking, but that fucking, for any of you guys that actually understand addiction, and I know a lot of the guests I'm going to have on in the future, this is their jam, addiction, being there through it and help people with it now. I think that's a big part of bringing this podcast and this content to you, is to really take you inside the heads of a lot of men who have overcome a lot. But for me, it was like, all right, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm not going to fight. I stuck to the fighting one. I was good at that. I still protected myself. I still went into the fight response, but the fight response was more verbal. It was more threats, more verbal, which was interesting. So it was still not healthy, but I didn't go to court again, which was really, really good, because that petrified me. But I got a lot of good from that, a lot of good for that. It was like this opportunity to pause that I never gave myself in life. So after that, I had plans of going over to Western Australia, the mines. I just, to fast forward, I even nearly sabotaged that. I hit the drugs really, really hard for my late 20s, party drugs and all that, and less drinking actually. And I was uncontrollable. It really was. It was sedating myself, suppressing emotions, sedating myself. Lost my best mate in my early 20s. Shit was coming up around that I couldn't deal with. And I finally got a job in the mines. It took me 6 years because I was just a pussy. I really was. I wasn't getting out of my comfort zone. I wouldn't talk to anyone. I started really putting out, and a good mate of mine over the time said, dude, this is your last chance. You've got to come. I've got a job for you. So I got the job. And the weekend before I was getting the drug tests and getting the physical, of course, Steve went out and partied and OD'd, ended up in hospital. It was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Guilt, shame. You guys know it. You know it well. It fucks so many of us men if we don't work on it. It holds us back so much. It fucking puts out our power. Well, I had my parents had long broken up since then, and dad was living outside of Melbourne, mum was north of Melbourne, and my phone had gone flat. I blacked out, and I had someone help me get me an ambulance, and I had no idea what was going on. It was a mess. I don't know what I took, but whatever it was, I thought I got spiked. It didn't matter. Whatever it was, I had full responsible for that situation. But I remember in the morning, my mum and dad walked in at the same time, and they're the only phone numbers I had. I didn't know who to call. And the same time, mum in her pajamas, freaking out, dad, big dad, looking, fuck, mum's here, whatever. They weren't talking. And here I am in the middle going, oh my God, why did I call my parents? It was fucking embarrassing and shameful. And I remember from that moment, that was my line in the sand. That really was. Now, I fucked up a few times after that. I did my best to go cold turkey from drinking and drugs. I did well with the drugs. I had no choice being in the mines. Great environment shift, drug tests and all the things. It was great, but I really went hard in the working direction. And it served me so well. Now, I'm not suggesting for any of you out there, if you've got a lot of shit going on in your life, if you're down and out, what I did, I filled my time and put myself in the most extreme working environment and work hours and hours so I wouldn't drink, so I wouldn't party, so I wouldn't go back to them environments, and formed other addictions in there. I was addicted to work. I was terrible at communication, but here I am trying to give pre-starts for a bunch of blokes who are listening to me. I was trying to organize jobs and run jobs. So I was good at running jobs, but I was just an angry motherfucker then. That's all I became. Got shit done. Started gymming, which was great, even though I had a crack at steroids. Again, sedate, suppressed, not good enough, mask, couldn't fit in, shortcut, all these things. And I'll definitely talk more about them in the podcast to come with some of the guests I've got going on. But it took till I lost my best mate to suicide in the mines. And I say my best mate, not because I hung out with him all the time, but he was the one grown man that I could confide in what I was feeling of all the pressures that I was putting myself under, working with 10, 20, 30, 50, 60 blokes, working 14, 15 hours a day, high pressure, high money, all the things. I loved it. I thrived in it. But at the same time, I was always on edge, ready to explode. And all the boys always experienced that. But lost the one guy I confided into suicide in the mines. And what that had for me, it was this defining moment. It was like, I just stopped when I found out. My boss at the time, who's a good mate, I really respect him a lot, really gave me a go over there and really, really let me do my thing. And I loved a lot of it, and I loved a lot of parts of it, but there's a lot of unhealthiness too. But I remember him ringing me. He was bored, and I'm like, what the fuck? That's unusual. And my heart just about stopped when he told me that what had gone down. And I remember walking over into the Spinifex in the Pilbara. I was in like Outback, Pilbara, WA. I just paused for a minute, and I don't even think I cried at the start, but I went down on my knees. I know that, and because I got Spinifex and fucking prickles and shit in me. But I'm like, well, this guy of all people was the nicest dude. And it just come through for me. I'm like, what am I on this fucking planet? What am I doing in this moment? Why the fuck am I here? And that triggered all the shit that's unfolded to now. It was like this moment where I asked a question that was different. I actually looked outside the box. Are you just going to be a mining supervisor? Could have been superintendent before I left. All these things that were unfolding. Always wanted to have my own machines and all this, but I just didn't have the courage or balls really to get outside my comfort zone and make it happen. Always self-sabotaged by spending my money or wasting or avoiding or whatever it was. But it was this defining question, this wild that I was in the wild. I was loving it, being out everywhere. My story to everyone is I love the Pilbara. I love working away. I love working fucking 200 hours a fortnight. All the rubbish stories that I had. There was elements I liked, but I was burning out. I was over life. It was not my mission, not my purpose to be there. Now, the answer to this question did not come straight away. Of course. Fuck no. How did the answer to this question start? All my shit from my past just start coming up. So for the next 2 years, it took me 2 years to get out of the mines. Cool little synchronicities happened, but this was the key for me. As soon as I asked, it wasn't a question where I'm like, give me the answer now. I was just like hands in the air, knees. I'm like, what the fuck am I on the planet for? And all my stuff from my past coming up. And to deal with it at the time, I didn't know how to. Started watching some motivational stuff and listened to it in the gym and at work. That was cool. That was really cool. Some Arnie Schwarzenegger stuff. Some pretty surface level shit, but it was a start. Started tuning into some motivational people on socials. Like Facebook for me was big fish, big snakes, and pictures of me that I could hide behind. That's it. Maybe some work shots, me in the wild, in the Pilbara. Fuck all else, because I used to hide behind that shit. But started watching, I was like, it was a hardcore PT in Melbourne. Some of you might know her, Katrina Ruth, Kat Latorzo, and I'm like, she was one of the first people I ever saw. I'm like, scared the shit out of me. But I watched, it was motivational. There's local people who were motivating me. I'm like, it took me 2 years to get out of the mines, and some synchronicities happened. There was a bit of a downturn in the mining work. I was at home. Far North Queensland at the time, renovating an apartment by myself, and I realized I was really, really unhappy. I knew this for a while, my stuff coming up from my past. On the work site, you know what I used to do? I had free reign. I could do what I want. I worked really, really hard, and I used to drive off site because I'd go into uncontrollable crying. The boys at work never knew this. I'd never tell them that, but I did because I couldn't deal with what was coming up. Losing my mate, like to suicide a couple of years before or a year before, like losing my best mate in my 20s, all the stupid shit I did and being hard on myself and just feeling sorry for myself. You could have classified it as a depression. I'm not one to give myself that story, but some of you might resonate with that. And I knew I needed to do something, but I didn't have the balls to talk to anyone. I didn't. No, I'd rather just drive off site and fucking bawl my eyes out and deal with it, feel a bit lighter and go back and do it again, or train harder in the gym. Push harder. It was sort of healthy, but sort of unhealthy at the same time. I was just anchoring in some dense emotions. I was fighting to suppress what was coming up. But I remember sitting in my apartment that I was renovating, and I think I was there for about 10 weeks. And I had my boat outside. I had a couple of cars, a couple of boats at the time. I had like 3 storage containers in 3 different states. A house in Victoria, apartment, fucking loans here and there. And very, very unhappy. I realized and acknowledged I was very unhappy. I was lonely. I wouldn't talk to women. If I did, it was very fucking surface level. And I would not be vulnerable. But I went fishing this one day and come back and was sitting in my apartment. And I did not enjoy being on my boat, being in nature, being in the wild. Actually, it was sort of like, I don't fucking like this. I'm just gonna, what am I gonna do? If I don't like that, what's the point? And good old socials has its good. Social media, it still has its good. Without social media, I wouldn't be here where I am today. Definitely, I wouldn't be able to help many people. I know there's a lot of shit going down with it at the moment, but I flicked on, I saw a mate who was climbing a fucking volcano in Bali talking about his personal shit in his relationship. And I'm like, holy fuck. From the most unexpected dude I know. Mr. Shane Crosby, you're a fucking legend. But it just gave me an answer to what am I here for? Yeah, sort of. But what am I going to do about this stuff? These feelings, these emotions. The story of Harden Up, Steve, was done. I was sick of fighting it. All that anger. That's why I was so angry. I used to fight to keep this in or to keep it away from people or allow it to come out in my projections in arguments or at work, being a dick or being authoritarian, whatever you want to call it. But I was done with that. I was tired. And I reached out to him fast forward. Went to my first personal development sort of event. It was a network marketing one. Was scared the shit out of all these happy people, and I was this miserable, fucking scared little boy. But I just kept going from there. I'm like, there's something in this. I felt better. I felt like I could like shift some energy. Ended up getting a coach, went to a retreat. That was it. I got my answer. What am I here for? It was like all men's stuff. That was like 7 years ago, I think now. 7 years ago, and I got my answer. What am I on this fucking planet for? Now, I didn't really run with it. It's really important, I think, to share that the mission, the purpose, why we're on this planet, what we're here to do. For some of you, it might be, yeah, I'm living it now. It's fucking easy. But for some of us, we've still got a lot of shit in our life that has us with this lack of clarity or this lack of trust in it, this lack of feeling safe in it or acknowledging and owning it. That's definitely been my journey. I really haven't probably fucking owned this until the last 12 months, to be honest. I'll be real with you there. Doesn't mean I haven't helped a lot of people in the thing, but really stepping into that, being okay and being fucking actually not okay, being fucking empowered to say, yeah, I'm here to fucking make a huge impact. I'm here to fucking move, motivate, inspire, lead fucking kings on this planet and do it my fucking way, not anyone else's way. I'm not saying that mentors, teachers, coaches haven't taught me a lot and I haven't got a lot of great tools that I utilize, but no, my fucking way, the wild man revolution. Because that energy, that passion, that drive, all the stuff that I had in my past, it's still fucking here. It's still here. But I've grounded in. Not only to who I am, this energy now is my fucking weapon. Good weapon, by the way. For good. This energy, this rage, this fucking fire that I've always had. My mission, my purpose is not just to channel it, but to help others channel it. And healing is a huge part of that. Fucking discipline. Owning that inner wild, that fucking, it is our superpower. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman listening to this. That's been my journey, owning it. I even went on a fluffy part of my journey. I've traveled the world, and ladies and gentlemen, I've been to Peru, Bali. I've spent a lot of time with amazing people. South America, Costa Rica, all this, doing big events and all these things for myself, facilitating and not healing, plant medicines, all this amazing. But I started going fluffy. And the fluffiness came, I needed to integrate. You could say I integrated my feminine and all that, but I really went away from this fire, this fucking grunt. But I needed to. I needed that part of my healing journey to come into that, to say, all right, my fucking queen. What might seem like a little thing to some of you out there, proposing, say, will you be my wife? That was fucking scary because I knew that was me owning being a fucking man in the house, in the family. Committing to a career that is reliant on sales, on growth, on being a people person, which I never was because I needed healing, really. Declaring my truth from the fucking rooftops, being okay with that. Taking radical responsibility of every little fucking piece of my life. I mentioned earlier, I never thought I was going to be a dad. I gave up. I gave up on a relationship. When I gave up on these things, I let go of the attachment to how they should be. That's when they showed up. I was doing the work around this. Don't worry about that. But I still didn't own it. And then they showed up, scared the fuck out of me. I'm like, oh shit. Being a dad. All you fucking parents out there, all you fathers, mothers, whatever it is, when the child comes along the first time, shit changes. A lot of you might be stuck in it going, fuck. A lot of it, yeah, it was great experience, but fuck, life's harder. Life only stays hard if you don't fucking shift with it. You don't grow with it. You don't commit to being more disciplined, more responsible. When I say more responsible, I'm not saying don't take fucking risks. Take all the risks. When you tap into that inner power, wow, what is a fucking risk? It's just an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity for newness, and newness is good. It scares the fuck out of most people. But for me, becoming a dad, when I never thought I would, have a look now, 3 years later, I've got a little fucking king on my hands. It's so epic. But committing to a career which wasn't going away from him, which wasn't going away from my queen. Yeah, I work a lot. Spend a lot of time here, there, and everywhere, but I do it around them. Go back to earlier in this podcast when I'm talking about my dad and all that. A lot of dads out there, previous generations, spend a lot of time away from the family. Some by choice, most unconscious by choice, providing. Again, my mum and dad did the best they could provide, and I wouldn't be here today. speaking my fucking truth, no matter where I went with my decisions and my choices, if it wasn't for them. So grateful. But for us going forward, for the men of the world, for the women of the world too, who need us men more than ever now. Us men need us men more than ever now. It's time to ask ourselves, why are we here? Again, if you know, are you playing a big enough game? Reason why I'm putting out this podcast now, I'm not playing a big enough game. I'm not reaching enough people. I had to fucking own that I was here to do this part. And I continue to own it. Every plateau, every challenge, every frustration, every fucking setback, every perceived failure. It's just feedback to be better, to connect in deeper, to trust more. I hope that's the example that I'm leaving for young River. I trust and know it is, because he feels that. It doesn't matter what words come out of my mouth. I see it in him every day, and I spend a lot of time with him. And I invite, I encourage, I implore you big people of the world, if you've got kids, reassess your life right now. You have been gifted this fucking amazing opportunity with all these fucking power struggles and these structures collapsing, all this perceived fucking chaos. There is a gift for you all. Instead of folding and staying in your fucking masks and making decisions from fear of what people think, of losing your jobs, whatever is coerced and threatened or hung over your head in front of you, it is an opportunity to pause and say, is this decision of my highest, not only just for fucking poor little me? Get out of your fucking own way and look at the macro for your legacy, your family, those around you. Who is watching on energetically? Who is tuning in energetically? What planet are you leaving for the next generation and the one beyond? Because that's what fucking drives me. And this is the opportunity that we have on hand right now. But we've got to see this as an opportunity. Of course, you're going to have stuff if you got your job hanging over your head and you're like, oh shit, I've got to do this to keep my job now. What the fuck? Doesn't feel good, but I'm going to do it because it's easier. Or my family saying this and this, don't follow your dreams right now. Don't do that right now. The markets are this and you can't make money doing that. Whatever there. Fuck them. You've got to do this now. That's why shit is so fucking crazy right now, because it is this opportunity to really ground in what is in full alignment for all of us. This is what this revolution is right now. If you're willing to partake, if you are willing to partake in it, if you are not, switch off now. Because what's coming next over these next few years is just gonna get fucking crazier until you commit to what is in full alignment. Trust your intuition. Do the inner work. Get some guidance, support, educate, be disciplined. Get your environment in order. Get your fucking kingdom in order. Oh, I'm glad I got to share this today. I got this nudge. I'm like, Steve, go record this podcast now. But them other couple of guests, they won't take it personally. We'll put them back by a couple of days. But this is why I'm here. This is what this is about. And I really, really hope that my mission, my message, not just what comes in these podcasts, whatever I share resonates, but moves. Has you move, or has you trust more? Has you take a bigger leap of faith or a bigger perceived risk? Has you contemplate but then act? Has you look outside your own little box? Because we all have our own little box. We all have this. I see it more now, like, fuck, I could pick shit out of spiritual community and all these communities. Everyone right now is getting an opportunity to look out of their own little narrow fucking laneways and box. You got to be willing to do that, but you got to have the courage to do that. It takes courage to be vulnerable. Again, I could talk about this all day. There's so many bits and pieces that I can share, especially from my past. It is my intention to do more of these by myself, but the guests I've got coming, hold tight, guys. And I would love to hear from you. If you like this, if you like any of the episodes, please leave a review, because the way the mechanisms work in this tech world, the likes, the comments, or reviews, they're recognized, and it helps get this up in the algorithms or whatever techie stuff, helps get my message out there. And if there's someone that can benefit from this, even if it's someone that can be triggered by this, I don't give a fuck, really. As long as it moves, motivates, inspires, whatever, as long as it creates a change in perspective, please get it to them. Please share it with them. And let me know if you guys got any guests. Are you listening and would love to be on? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about me. No way. This is about all the people that I am here to serve. So anyway, guys, it's been another edition of the Wild Man podcast. Please check out everything below, and get in touch. Anything here resonates, let me know. Much love. Have respect. Doesn't mean we agree. I love that. See you later.